Pity the tyrant of the microcosm, those whose powerlessness outside the walls of their office, their school, their house, cultivates a sense of tyranny within. And the more agency the world takes from you, the more those under your thumb suffer for it. We see it everywhere. The overbearing boss who's having marital problems at home, the power-tripping teacher whose finances are looking shaky, the schoolyard bully who's neglected by his family, the abusive parent or spouse who take their own failings out on anyone unlucky enough to be trapped in their orbit. They control little, so what they lack in subjects, they make up for in might. Today we see a tale of one such tyrant. We see what happens when the subjects, the victims of this tyrant, are beyond the reach of the outside world, confined away, and condemned to be tortured, voiceless, helpless, and alone. Mouses is a short story by Thom Jones. Originally published in the August 11, 1997 issue of The New Yorker, it follows a mid-career loner named Anson as he falls into paranoia that his home is infested with mice. He attempts to fight this paranoia with reason, but when he finds a box of wheat thins chewed to oblivion, coupled with nondescript droppings in close proximity, he braces for the worst. He arms his home to the teeth, expecting some dog-sized rat to be the culprit, but when a trap finally springs, he finds a little gray mouse, dead under the DAP bar. His second victim is a bit more fortunate. The trap catches the mouse by its paw, dealing non-lethal damage, and Anson doesn't really have the heart to finish the job, despite all his semi-sadistic bluster, so he takes the mouse in as a sort of pet. Over time they bond, and he names the little guy Al. All things considered, Anson seems like a normal enough guy, if a little too knowledgeable in the art of killing varmints. But there's an ominous undercurrent rolling in. He's having a significant deal of trouble at work. Despite holding a fairly respectable position as an engineer, he is aging, his health is worsening, and his value as an employee is ever so slowly decreasing. From the context clues provided, he likely suffers from scoliosis. He describes himself as exceptionally short, 5'0", having a crooked spine and a hump on his back, and dealing with relatively persistent pain issues. This physical malady makes him the butt of a lot of jokes. He's often referred to as the midget, and this understandably gets under his skin. His boss and coworkers are notably antagonistic, blaming him for anything and everything that goes even peripherally wrong. This all comes to a head when he's told to pack up his things. If that's not enough, it's almost Christmas, and nobody is hiring. And, just like that, Anson is left without a job, without an anchor, without a purpose. Around this time he gets a companion for Al, a female mouse named Angela, but Angela is aggressive and uncooperative. She attacks Al, thus earning the ire of Anson. Where he keeps Al on a strict exercise regimen to keep him healthy, he cuts access for Angela and begins purposely overfeeding her until she's fat and miserable. It's here we see Anson's vengeful side start to rear its head, as he loses more and more control over his own situation, as he scratches and scrambles to find the friction to slow his fall. Something is roused within him, something once sleeping, now wide awake. Angela eventually kills over with a heart attack, and this plants a very dark seed in Anson's mind. He thinks of all the unhealthy habits he's indulged, and, now sobered to the danger of those habits, this galvanizes him to concoct a rather deranged plan. He goes to the pet store, and it's there he purchases 24 mice. By morning, he canvasses the city in search of work, amassing rejection after rejection. By evening, he begins conducting experiments. His goal is to find ways to improve himself, using the mice as guinea pigs. His philosophy is simple: if it works on an animal, it'll work on a human, and vice versa. Which, I'm glad he was an engineer and not a scientist, for as knowledgeable as he seems on other things, that take is wild. But insane as it may be, that take becomes the basis of his work. He puts the mice on his own daily regimen: food, wake-sleep schedule, the works, and unsurprisingly, they don't fare very well. Anson notes, I put the mice on a variety of diets and subjected them to various stresses. I kept a control group and fed its members the same mouse chow I fed Al. Other mice, eating a diet similar to my own, drinking a proportionate amount of coffee, and keeping the same hours, were dead in 5 weeks. Challenge, a momentary adaptation to stress, then exhaustion and death. I accepted the results with equanimity. I knew what was in the cards for me. Once again, I had evidence. Maybe I was lucky to have been canned. What I needed now was a plan. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. He tests his vitamins out on the mice. Much later in the story, he even begins testing his medication. At this point, he's basically playing God, mining deep for some twisted bid at longevity, hoping to get the jump on some Nobel Prize-worthy discovery. His motivations are muddled at best, but the common thread is clear: getting back the control he lost by any means necessary. Soon his flirtation with tyranny upscales to marriage. He begins testing the limits of their physical capabilities. Of his mice, Anson observes, the walkers were put on exercise wheels equipped with speed governors and forced to march at a 9-mile-per-hour pace 8 hours a day. Along the bottoms of their cages were metal grids wired to give them an electric shock if they decided to hop off the wheel and shirk their duty. A few rebelled, but the rebellion was dealt with easily. I merely dialed up the electricity. Anson's growing callousness is revealed when he mocks one of the mice that ended up dying from the electrocution. Despite there being immense physical wreckage, including burns along its paws, he refers to it as a crybaby, and appears to laugh off the result. The survivors progressively shape up, so all this to find out what he should have already known, that exercise is good for you. Groundbreaking. By now we start to realize he's just toying with the mice because he wants to, because he's bored, because he can. And, by now, this emboldened, sadistic attitude has spread to other areas in his life. He begins crank-calling his old boss in the middle of the night. He waits 20 minutes or so for him to fall back to sleep, before calling again. This vengeful tryst is cut short when his old boss gets caller ID and threatens legal action. Spooked, Anson reins it in, but his misfortune doesn't stop there. He's such a regular at the unemployment office that the other regulars are starting to learn his name. They're starting to warm up to him, and one day a regular invites him out to this fancy Greek restaurant. Assuming the guy finally found work, Anson obliges, but the guy turns out to be a habitual liar, and when it comes time to pay, he dashes, leaving Anson on the spot with 60 cents in his pocket. Anson tries to run too, but he's caught. He spends the weekend in jail, and when he finally gets home he finds Al, the one mouse he actually loved, dead. At this point, Anson begins to spiral. He's fighting the world, but the world is fighting back just as hard. He begins brutalizing his mice, hosting gladiator tournaments, shooting them up with homemade steroids, trying to create super mice, with the hopes of translating that into a superhuman, probably hoping it'll be himself. And above all, finding entertainment in watching them kill each other. Hannibal, the reigning champion of these tournaments, quickly becomes a favorite. That is until he loses. That is until he dares bite Anson, at which point Anson hurls him against a wall and stomps him to death. The descent into madness continues in force, and at the rate it's going, you'd probably expect this tale to end with Anson dead, frying himself on his own contraptions, his body eaten by the very mice he tortured, his narration being some kind of reflection from the afterlife. But it doesn't exactly end that way. This story isn't really interested in a morally acceptable ending. It decides to be a little more audacious than that, and in doing so, it makes quite the point. Anson eventually lands a job. They're surprisingly eager to accept him, despite his malady, despite his criminal record. He starts off small-time, but the work is easy, and the people are warm. He enjoys it so much that he begins to excel, and before he knows it, he's promoted to a position that pays even better than the job he was fired from. He's slowly socialized, even making a few human friends. And as he regains his control in the outside world, scrap by scrap, as his feet finally find purchase on the harrowing cliff face of life, his desire for power fades. It's implied he stops mistreating his mice, and those remaining are allowed to live out the rest of their lives in peace. The story closes in a pretty unconventional way, with Anson rambling about aliens. I'm not joking. He concludes, the mice, as they died off, I buried in little toilet paper tubes. They have a life expectancy of 3 years. I didn't replace them. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. What I did was pretty unconscionable. Absolute power, as they say. I'm not proud of my behavior. I had been living without checks and balances. The crap I pulled makes me think of what the space invaders will do to us if they ever conquer the world. Make slaves of us, eat us, flay us alive and torture us, do every kind of sinister thing in the book. There's a dark side to intelligent beings, an irrational craving for war, personal defilement, and reckless destruction, even if we know better. So if aliens are out there and they do come down, I don't expect good things. Aliens aren't out there flying around on errands of mercy or benevolence. To them, we're just so much protein. We're calories. When the space invaders take over, it's the end of the human era. Before that happens, I want to get in a few good times, travel to Ireland, learn how to dance, take tuba lessons. Who knows? I've learned that happiness is like the gold in the Yukon mines, found only now and then, as it were, by the caprices of chance. It comes rarely in chunks or boulders, but in the tiniest of grains. I'm a free floater now, happy to take what little comes my way. A grain here, a grain there. What more could you ask for? I believe this story's greatest brilliance is how it portrays Anson. There's little warning he's going to go off the deep end, and by the time he takes that swan dive over the edge, you've already warmed up to him as this semi-sympathetic person. It takes you inside his skin, and you hear his thoughts, and you laugh at his odd, quirky sense of humor, and you understand his disgruntled fringe of society perspective. Then a switch flips. He suffers what I guess would be classed as a nervous break, and he turns full-on psychopath. And when I say a nervous break, there's still self-awareness. He has moments of paranoia. He's terrified someone will find the mice and realize what he's been up to. He even conjures a hypothetical critic who compares him to Joseph Mengele, which tells me he knew perfectly well the abhorrence of his actions. He was just too caught up in himself and his own woes to care. He tries to absolve himself at the end by basically saying, "Hey, the aliens are eventually gonna come and treat me like I treated the mice, so I don't have to feel as guilty. I have a right to be happy, because I'm gonna get mine eventually, right?" But what are the odds he actually believes in aliens? This seems more like a cope than anything. Overall, he's mildly regretful, but it's the kind of regretful a person would be for leaving the toilet seat up, so it doesn't exactly match the crime. It's clear we're not meant to sympathize with Anson so much as we're meant to understand him. He's a case study, and we see the anatomy of an abuser from the inside out, from his making to his undoing. Anson wasn't so different from the allegedly one-dimensional, overbearing boss he despised. He wasn't so different from the workplace bullies who hurt him for their own amusement, who tried to make him their scapegoat. He was just another tyrant of his own little microcosm, hemorrhaging control, searching desperately for a tourniquet. There's a central theme amid all this strangeness. By Anson's own descriptions, we can gather that he's most likely nearing middle age, most likely not very attractive, most likely an unmarried, childless outcast, somewhat reclused from the rest of the world. He finds a bit of pride in his job, but that's taken from him. At one point, while searching for a new job, he attempts to look younger by dyeing his hair black, figuring younger people have an easier time finding work. But the dye job is super obvious, and one of the dudes at the unemployment office jokes that he looks like Bela Lugosi. Value is assigned to appearance, but that escapes him. Value is assigned to youth, but that escapes him. Value is assigned to position, but that escapes him. The only thing left, then, is to tighten your grip on whatever shadow of control you can catch. Control is the ideal surrogate for value. Control is safety. Control is everything you'll ever want, until you take a step back and realize it's not. Anson is a miserable, depressed person, and after he becomes the all-powerful overlord of the mice, he's still a miserable, depressed person. The only times he's ever actually happy are with Al, and with the friends he makes at the end. Control is an illusion. Much like a mouse on a running wheel, enticed by some morsel of food, you can kill yourself chasing after it, but in the end it gets you absolutely nowhere. Appearance, station, age, mortality. Control is an illusion. You can indulge the pursuit forever, but it'll never be wholly yours. But camaraderie, that can be wholly yours. And when you're loved and accepted and respected as an equal, there's no longer any point in controlling your environment. Value and safety become accessible naturally. You can get the most out of life right where you are. I like how Anson compares unemployment to the stages of cancer. It's pretty amusing. If you're freshly unemployed, you're a stage 1 no job. If you're comfortably unemployed, you're a stage 3 no job. And if you're devastatingly terminally unemployed, like no shower for a month picking lint out of your belly button, you're a stage 5. I thought that was pretty creative. The story is oddly funny, which, considering the subject matter, is quite a feat. Like, call me crazy, but the first part of the story reminded me a little of Hunter S. Thompson's manic, paranoid, offbeat brand of snark. And if you're an aspiring humorist, that's about as big of a compliment as you can get. The phrase rodential air is hilarious. I'm sorry, it just is. So, what are your thoughts on mouses? Interpretations? Asseverations? Opine in the comments below if you have any opinions to give. And as always, thanks for watching.